Home. Chapter 75. A Miraculous Ladybug Fanfiction written and narrated by Mira Rose. If you haven't heard the previous 74 parts of this story, and you just skipped to 75 to see if they get a happy ending, yes, they got a happy ending, okay? Go back and watch the other 74 parts. You weirdo! I mean, in the best way, but also, it's kind of weird. They're free, they're all available. Anyway, if you are still listening and I haven't, left a foul taste in your mouth at this point, please smash that like button so Plag gets his camembert and comment a baker's wedding. Please enjoy Home. Chapter 75. Adrian as Cat Noir. A homecoming. Cat Noir had never truly gotten used to a homecoming party, even after each night of their trip ending with Marinette. So here, at the airport with signs decorated with paw prints and Mr. Dupang Chang with hearts doodled around it, made his heart swell as he looked at his soon-to-be in-laws and best friends. "Mom! Dad!" Marinette raced past him, tackling her parents at the baggage claim. He lingered back, taking in the scene until Tom waved his hand for him to join them. There were curious stares, of course, but Alia already crafted a story for propaganda. Cats were natural bakers, so of course a retired superhero would end up working at a bakery, right? Nino and Alia were there too. It was the first time he'd seen Nino in person since calling him up and telling him that he was Adrian Agreste. His friend accepted it wholeheartedly, even teasing him about some very specific details from their shared teenage years. It'd been about a month of traveling around Europe, and another month between the Eastern Asian coast and the United States since he'd seen him last. "Nice to have you back, dude," Nino said, reaching out for a handshake, but pulling him into a hug. "You too, man," Cat said into his shoulder. "You too. You realize your wedding's already planned for you, right?" He chuckled, not letting go. "As expected. You're gonna love the dress." He stepped back, shaking his head, but trailing his hands to Nino's elbows. No. Marinette spent nearly the entire trip lugging around fabric and stitching at night. She's gonna wear that one. "What?" Alia spun, eyes shooting daggers before turning to Marinette. "I got one of your designs custom made!" "Oops," Marinette said, grinning as she looked at him. His heart wobbled at the exchange, but he couldn't expect any less from it. He was marrying this woman, after all. "But also," Alia continued, "who comes back the day before their wedding? That's what honeymoons are for. Please tell me you at least wash your face every night. Did you get the whitening strips I sent? Did you wear sunscreen? Did you get any new freckles? You're skinny as ever, but Alia!" Marinette laughed, letting go of her friend's hand to walk over to Cat, pulling him away from Nino as she wrapped an arm around his hip. "Alia, take a breath." She stuck out her lower lip, her nose and chin crinkling. "This is our day. The OTP of Paris is getting married. Come on, you two. Time to separate and time to part." "Hey!" Nino said, securing a grip on Cat's shoulder and pulling him back. "See you tomorrow, babe," Marinette said, lifting herself to the top of her toes for a kiss. "See you tomorrow," he smiled back, returning the gesture by bending just a touch. Another hand grabbed his other shoulder, and Cat looked up to see Tom Dupang staring down at him. Regardless of teenage growth spurts, Tom would always be a bigger man. A hovering, threatening gingerbread man of kindness, so long as you didn't push his gumdrop buttons. "Let's go, son." And so, for the first time, Cat Noir spent a night out on the town with his father. Nina was there too, of course, and a few others whom he loved, truly loved. But at the end of it all, it was him and Tom staggering into the bakery, closed for the weekend, to celebrate their daughter's wedding. Even despite the great night out, Kat had to wonder what Marinette was up to right now. Was she asleep? Did she eat enough? Had the shoes Alia put her in give her blisters? Did she think about him? Weary, he let his transformation go and collapsed into the couch. Tom passed out on the floor and, superhero or not, Adrian couldn't budge him. Nino made sure there would be a hefty supply of camembert for the immortal black hole, and Plagg rushed to it, singing love songs as soon as he was released from the ring. This felt good. This felt right. Adrian still wasn't comfortable without his mask. 2 months couldn't heal his dysmorphia, but it did heal his worry about never overcoming it. He would, with Marinette's support. Together. Someday they could publicly introduce him as Adrian Dupang Chang, but it wouldn't be tomorrow, even if that's what the government would call him from now on. It wasn't her place to heal him, but her support meant everything to him, especially on days he couldn't even show her his face. Adrian certainly felt bad for robbing his fiancée and her parents of a grand wedding because of his mental problems. But them adjusting meant the world to him. He hadn't thought of it that way at first. He found it shameful to have the accommodations at someone else's expense. Marinette helped him see it in a different light. The accommodations were a badge of honor, proof that he was loved, proof that people valued him enough, even just on a human-to-human level, to help him on his journey through life. Making and taking accommodations for mental health and recovery isn't shameful. Closing his eyes, Adrian did his best to sleep, a strange calmness washing over him as he thought about tomorrow. The small ceremony. Someday, he'd throw a huge party to renew their vows. Something worthy of the woman he'd always idolized and used her luck to hold in his heart and his arms. He woke up to his Kwame alarm clock, groaning for more cheese. Rubbing his eyes, Adrian sat up, his face as stiff as the couch cushions. Pounding rang from the door, and Tom, still on the floor, groaned. "I'll get it," Adrian said, his pulse quickening as Tom's eyes fluttered open. "There's nothing like dysphoria to wake you up in the morning. Claws out." When Kat opened the door, Nino stumbled in, looking panicked. "The rings," he said. "The rings?" Kat repeated. "Where are the rings?" Oh no. Where were the rings? Did you check with Tiki? Tiki? Or any of the other Kwamis? Go check with the Kwamis. They might have taken them so they could be part of the wedding. He'd gotten to know all of them very well over the past 2 months, as Marinette refused to leave them behind when they went back to tell her parents about the adventure he hadn't planned for. "Got it, thanks." Nino left, thumping down the staircase. How was the best man more stressed out than the groom? Well, perhaps he was the strange one for being so calm on such a life-changing day. A day he'd dreamed about since he basically met his fiancée. Well, in a few hours, she wouldn't be his fiancée anymore. She would be his wife. Helping his soon-to-be father-in-law up and getting him a glass of water, Kat took a final look at the living room, making sure he hadn't forgotten anything. It was about time for him to go to the venue, and if there was anything he wasn't going to be late to, it would be his wedding. Well, It's not like the venue was all of 54 steps away or anything. Fixing up his hair, Cat gave himself a wink in the mirror and headed downstairs, his heart beating louder with every stair nose. Oh, now he had the pitter-patters. The bakery, at some point, had been rearranged, with the register now decorated as an altar not to capitalism, but to love. A tribute to love. Their love. His love. For a flicker of a moment, his heart felt exactly the same way it did when he first fell in love with Ladybug. Sunshine and hopeful and high on a new lifestyle he'd been given. In a way, it was about to happen all over again. Ugh, finally, Cat Noir, I'm the one who's supposed to be fashionably late. Cat turned, grinning, to the voice. Hello, Chloe. Don't get me wrong, I don't like either of you, Chloe said, dressed in a black cocktail dress with yellow accessories to accent and waving her hand in the air. If it weren't for you marrying my literal business partner, I wouldn't be here. Since when did you know? She snorted. You remember when we used to pretend we were spies as kids? Cat nodded, laughing at the memory. Yeah, you put those skills to work. We both know I'm smart when it's worth the effort to learn something. She tucked a piece of hair behind her ear as she placed a hand on her hip. The short bob hairstyle she adorned suited her, and it was clear she used purple conditioner. So keeping Hawkmouth in the apartment that Marinette Dupeng Chang moved into after Adrian went AWOL? And how even Cat Noir, the guy with the stupidest jokes in the world, didn't crack any while Nino and Alia played a board game with the country's nemesis? I'm blonde, but I'm not that kind of dumb. You got all that from a game? Cat smiled, impressed and even somewhat relieved. Who do you think took care of your inheritance when you were away? And took care of that creepy shrine? Oh, he thought it was Natalie, or even Marinette, who cleared out the mansion. But now that he thought about it, the only things left in that building were things important to him. But terrible memories, like the long dining room table and chairs with cushions still stiff, were gone. Yet another person looked out for him, all this time, and he hadn't realized it. Thank you, Chloe. Ugh, I can't believe you are Cat Noir. I hoped I was wrong, but sometimes I'm too smart for my own good. She fanned herself with a bakery brochure. I should have shot my shot while you were being nice to Queen Bee. Please, you hate a man in all black leather. Oh, don't even get me started on those ears, she said, pointing at his head with a scowl. Even on your wedding day? Shouldn't you have changed up the suit a little bit? He couldn't help but grin back. She was different, but she was still Chloe, his childhood friend. I can't believe you're the pastor. Yeah, well, there are benefits to the business if I am. Cat scrunched his nose, wondering just what loophole his childhood friend and high school thorn found. Whatever. She was one of the few, if only, who could do this for them unless Marinette put her mask on as well. Thank you, Chloe. Ugh, don't do that. Save your sap for the Dupeng Changs. You have the house ready, right? Who do you think I am? Chloe flipped her hair. Fully decorated, on your coin. I'm very excited to move in my things. Chloe? She rolled her eyes. She's gonna love it. And if you two break up, I'm taking her side. As you should. Places! Alia rushed in, holding a vlog camera. Places! She yelled. You know that footage can't ever see the light of day, right? Chloe snapped, crossing her arms but not furrowing her eyebrows. That's right. She didn't believe in wrinkles or whatever. Get behind the register, you walking tax evasion. If you can't afford a lawyer, just say so. Chloe rolled her eyes, but did as she was told as Nino came out of nowhere to pull him to the proper side. "You ready for this, dude?" he asked. "Always and never," Kat replied, watching Alia press play and letting the piano guy's cover of Home sing out. A song they'd stumbled upon in America, and Marinette knew would be their song in an instant. He'd never heard of Philip Phillips before they slow danced, or rather swayed, to it on a rooftop in Miami, but it was magic nonetheless. A magic no Miraculous would ever be able to compete with. Sabine joined Alia across from them, gracing him with a smile and a thumbs up. Phew. This certainly wasn't what she expected for her only daughter's wedding, but until he could make it out in public as not Cat Noir, he wouldn't be able to declare his love for her publicly. One day. But not today. One day they'd get married. Again. However she wanted it to be. The Kwamis shuffled in, each holding a petal in one hand so the camera would see their proof of existence, and throwing others to the ground with giggles. Some ended up throwing petals at each other, but that's to be expected. Surprisingly, however, tricks whizzed to Alia, who transformed in a light that took everyone off guard. And then, with a smile, she used her flute to turn the bakery into a forest that would make the fair folk jealous. A cottagecore aesthetic with the homecoming smell of the bakery wafting through it. Kat nodded, smiling his approval. It explained the sparse decorations that were so unlike her. And then he heard the click of high heels, despite the pseudo-moss woven trail they stood on, and he turned his head, his heart fluttering up his throat and catching his breath when he saw her. Marinette, with tear-streaked cheeks, walked arm in arm with Tom as he sobbed, snot dripping, with smiles on both of their faces. It was almost hard to tell who was escorting who. Kat felt his tear ducts betray him too, and found it hard to swallow as he held eye contact with his lover. Tom held onto her arm for an extra moment, making everyone chuckle until Sabine and Nino pried him off, letting him blow through tissue after tissue as the music cadenced and came to a close. "You good?" Chloe said, staring Tom down with arms crossed. "He'll be okay," Sabine nodded, watching Nino rub her husband's back. "Good. I've a nail appointment at noon." Chloe cleared her throat and picked up a stapled packet. "Congratulations, you're here with friends and family. Is there anything you want to say before becoming legally bound?" Kat barely had time to take Marinette's hands in his before laughing at the absurdity of it all. Chloe was just the cherry on top of this ridiculous scene. "I do, yes," he began, turning from Marinette's questioning eyes to Nino behind him. "You have it?" he asked. Hey, dude, you got it, dude." Nino pulled out a small frame from his suit jacket, handing it to him. "I hate men's pockets," Rena Rouge muttered. "Marinette Dupang Chang," Cat Noir began, one of his hands holding her as he held the frame, looking at the embroidered handkerchief inside. "You taught me that an artist should sign what they create. So I would like you—" He felt Nino tap his shoulder with a Sharpie. Catching it as he dropped it meant letting go of Marinette's hand, but so be it. "To sign this with me, as a promise." "What are—" She gasped as he turned the frame around, showing her the cross-stitch he'd made all those years ago, with a message scribbled across the glass. "Oh, it's like the sticky note from Grey's Anatomy," Rena Rouge gasped. "Oh, will you shut that mouth of yours?" Chloe snapped. Stop ruining the moment. The ladies probably scowled at each other, but Cat didn't look. Cat didn't care. He watched his fiancé's eyes turn glassy as she read the words he'd written out for her, nodding. "Give me the marker," she whispered, her voice heavy with emotion. He did. She signed, and then so did he. "Any objections to these two being husband and wife?" Chloe asked, looking almost bored. Cat was too focused on Marinette beaming, looking from the frame to him and back to see what the others were doing. "Great. I pronounce you husband and wife. You can kiss, not that you haven't before." Cat's eyes stung as Marinette's grin widened, even though that shouldn't be possible, and he leaned in, wrapping his arms around her with their framed wedding vows in hand, when a flash of light put them on guard as their lips touched. Twisting her behind him and alert, Cat looked around to see the bakery as it should be. "Sorry," Alia said, raising her hand like they were in class. "I only have 5 minutes after using it, remember?" The room laughed, and Cat felt his wife press her forehead to his back, her turn to wrap her arms around him. "Shall we?" she said. "We shall." He placed a hand over hers on his stomach, holding it for a moment before turning, grinning, and picking her up. "Princess." He took her up the stairs, to her room, and then to the roof, the bridal party hollering as he carried her. Well, Alia and Nino hollered. Chloe took a selfie with him in the background, and Tom sobbed. Sabine had somehow gotten a hold of the camera, filming with a smile, as the Kwamis chucked leftover petals at each other. It was loud and chaotic, and just what he'd expect from this group gathered together. "Shall we?" he asked, looking down at his wife as he secured a foot on the balcony railing. Marinette laughed, changing her grip. "Yes," she said, "we shall." And with that, Cat Noir leapt, taking his bride to their home. He could see the confusion on Marinette's face as they landed in front of the Agreste mansion. "Adrian!" she began, gasping as he set her down. He told her he would take care of living arrangements once they got married. "This is—" "You were talking about buying your own place earlier." Cat secured her palm in hers and led her to the front door. "I figured you wouldn't want to commute too far to go to work." "What do you mean?" The door opened, revealing the staircase and foyer that was an obvious glam appeal built into the building's design. "On your left, madam," he began, pointing with their framed vows in hand, "is the business suite, prepared by the one and only Chloe Bourgeois, and on the right," her eyes followed his finger as he pointed, "is our living quarters." "But do you—" Marinette swallowed, squeezing his hand. "Here? You want to live here? With everything that happened to you?" He looked down at his wife, his smile not matching her concern. "You are the happy memories I've always wanted here, Marinette. Besides, do you remember what you said about having children?" Her face paled. "Kids?" "Long ago, the first time we made Lumpia together, I asked you about kids, and you said you'd want kids first and a career second." Her face went pale as he spoke. "But you already have the latter, and I don't want you to give that up. But I also don't want you to feel separate from them when they come. This building is big enough for everything you've wanted, Marinette. You don't have to choose." She looked around once more. I thought you and Natalie were going to sell this place.
Cat laughed. For a while, I did too. But you know what my dream is now, Marinette?
His wife narrowed her eyes. What?
Being the stay-at-home dad I always wanted to have, when the time comes for us.
Marinette, stunned, blinked her face into a smile, understanding what he meant. Well, she began, tugging at him to lead him up the stairs. I don't plan on having kids yet, you know. I want to date you a bit more first.
Oh, Chloe would kill both of us, he laughed.
Alia would celebrate, though.
I wouldn't be surprised if Alia's doing fertility witchcraft for us right now.
Marinette laughed so hard she snorted. I can see it. I can see it.
Here, he said, stopping at a door. Our bedroom.
Oh, it's not... She looked down the hall.
You want to live together in my teenage bedroom?
Cat Noir raised an eyebrow, teasing.
That's a little weird to me, Marinette.
She scowled, face going red. That's not...
Here.
He turned the doorknob, opening to their room. He hadn't seen it yet either, so he nearly gasped when she did. He wasn't sure if Chloe and Alia would have cooperated well enough to make it stunning, but they did. And above the headboard was a single nail, not holding anything. Cat, is this... Marinette began, her hand slipping out of his as she went to explore the walk-in closet with dresses already in her size. Having money was great, wasn't it?
Here,
he said, walking onto the bed with his knees to the headboard and straightening himself in front of the nail.
Here should be good, right?
Marinette turned from the other side of the room, looking at him holding the framed handkerchief he'd stitched years ago with their wedding vows signed on the glass. Yes, she said, expression melting. Yes, that's perfect. Marinette slid in next to him, the two of them staring at it as it hung in the center above their bed.
Happy wedding day, my love,
Cat Noir said, pulling her in by the shoulder and kissing her hair. Happy wedding day, she returned, sliding her arm around his hip. They sat like that, taking in the start of their new life for a few moments.
Not to break the mood,
Cat said, pulling away.
But do you want to go make food?
She laughed. Oh, absolutely. I wasn't allowed to eat so I could have the stomach of a bride.
I promise I can cut an onion without instruction.
Well, as long as you don't throw the pot out of the kitchen, I'll trust you.
The cat placed a hand on his chest. My lady, our kitchen doesn't have windows. It's perfect for a cat like me.
But you know what?
What?
We should go shopping for ingredients first. He hesitated, wondering if she was thinking of the same recipe he was.
I did have the fridge stocked already.
With egg roll wrappers? Cat grinned, taking her hand in his.
No.
Then we'll have to go get them.
Together?
Together.
And then?
Marinette smiled, leaning in to kiss her husband. And then we'll cook together. Here. At home.
Home,
Cat Noir whispered, smiling at his wife, the warm, familiar fire flickering in his heart. Home. This feeling of home wasn't temporary. It wasn't going anywhere. And now they had lumpia to make. Together. Thank you so much for listening. That concludes the series Home, a Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction written and narrated by Mira Rose. For those of you still listening, don't forget to give a thumbs up and leave the comment Home to help support the author, the YouTube algorithm. You can support this channel by becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/MiraWrites. A super duper big awesome thank you to Toph, also known as Nothing Special on Instagram, for this fan art that I'm using as this ending image. Like that's so cool. I'll have her linked. And also a second thank you to Alicia Jane, also known as Alicia_D on Instagram, also linked in the description box, for going out of her way and actually physically making the Home is Where Marinette Is cross stitch. That is so super awesome. For those of us less crafty, if you would like a Home is Where Marinette Is item, apparel, pillowcase, sticker, or something to go on your water bottle, you can get that in my Redbubble store, linked in the description box. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye! Home. Epilogue. A Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction written and narrated by Mira Rose. Adrian Dupang Chang on his 32nd birthday.
Wait, you're telling me Dad's last name isn't Dupang?
Oh, the joys of having a 6-year-old. It wasn't, Adrian began, passing his daughter a napkin. I took it when I married your mom.
I thought Mom's name was Chang and yours was Dupang,
Emma continued, ignoring the gesture. Sometimes that's how marriages work, like with your grandparents. Adrian set down his fork, picking back up the napkin to rub it on her face, but not with your parents.
So, what's your name, Dad?
Louis asked. How the 5-year-old's face stayed free of red sauce while his sister's didn't was beyond him. Agrest, Adrian said, looking his son in the eye. I grew up as Adrian Agrest.
Don't use your real name. It's weird. It's not weird, Emma argued. All parents have real names. Otherwise, the government would have 1,000,000 moms and dads, or even more.
Adrian chuckled. Aunt Alia bought them a spy kit a few weeks ago, and they were obsessed with the government now. Hopefully they grow out of it. So when I married Mom, he continued, I took her family's names.
Why?
Emma scrunched her nose.
Feminism?
Where did you learn that word?
Aunt Alia.
Of course. Sheesh, Alia, she was literally 6. Once you turn 8, I'll explain to you what trauma and PTSD is.
Why 8?
Remember what Mom taught you about your brain developing in stages? Adrian caught a grape Louis tried to throw at his sister and shot him a look.
Brains are squishy,
Louis chirped in. Yes.
And we have 2 eyeballs.
He held his eyes open with his fingers and looked around the table. Yes, you do.
Some people have 1 eye.
Emma raised her hand, chiming in. Yes, they do. Adrian sighed, defeated as his question was lost on the little circus. His phone buzzed, his watch lighting with a message. Marinette. She was still stuck at her event. Hey, want to surprise Mom? He asked, pressing a smile on.
Mom,
Louis said.
Ugh, chores again?
Emma whined. You know how we're going to the bakery for my birthday? Adrian said, passing his daughter another napkin.
Yes!
They answered at the same time. How about we meet her there?
Okay!
Okay, who can clean up the fastest? Adrian kept an eye on them as they raced to clean up, mostly for stray spaghetti sauce and Emma's path. She was messier than Marinette during a launch. Meet you there, he texted, then put his phone in his back pocket and picked up his plate. A ring came from the front door as he helped Emma with her shoes, with Louis already standing and ready to go.
I got it!
Emma said, raising her hand and dashing, tugging Adrian's fingers off the half-tied shoelaces.
Grandma! Grandpa!
Mom, Dad, Adrian echoed, wide-eyed. Weren't we supposed to go over there? Oh, we're the distraction. Sabine winked as Tom picked up a child in each arm. She feels bad about being late on a day like today, you know? I know. Adrian smiled at the ground.
Is Uncle Superhero gonna come again now that Grandpa's here?
Emma asked, weaving her fingers into her grandpa's mustache. Never trust a child with a secret identity. Someday, when they were older, they'd learn that Aunt Ladybug and Uncle Cat were actually Mom and Dad, but not for a while. Not yet. Still, they had memories, especially Emma, growing up on a masked man's lap at the bakery. While he might not need the mask anymore, sometimes it was nice to take the easy path. There's no bragging rights in living life on hard, is there? No, Adrian said, licking his thumb and wiping a bit of sauce off of Emma's cheek. Not today.
But I like Uncle Cat.
So does your mother, Sabine said.
Mom!
He hissed. The adults laughed, and so did the children, although they weren't quite sure why. The door opened a second time, leaving them to turn to Marinette, out of breath, in the threshold. Sorry, she began. Tiki won't let me transform now that I'm 5 months along.
Mom!
Emma squealed, pushing herself out of Tom's arms and tugging his mustache in the process to run to her. Hi, babies. She looked up, locking eyes with Adrian. I'm home. Welcome home, he said, the anxiety of the afternoon melting. She'd made it. He knew she would. And even if she hadn't, it wouldn't have been on purpose. Or to, well, be an active terrorist or something. We've got the kids, Tom boomed. Run along. I've had plenty of running, thank you, Marinette said, waving her hand, then dragging Emma as she hugged her thigh over to her father for a hug. And thank you for watching them. So I heard it's a boy? Sabine mused. Yes, Hugo. Her hands retreated to her abdomen. Last one? She raised an eyebrow. Come on, Adrian said, taking her by the waist. Let's go. He led her upstairs to the playroom, his old bedroom, and Marinette sighed. I think it's ridiculous that Tiki's fine with you carrying me, but not letting me transform myself. Shh, claws out. He transformed, echoed with a napping plag's protest, then picked up his pregnant wife. Do as the Kwame asks, okay? She rolled her eyes, wrapping her arms around his neck. At least I have a reliable escort. Cat laughed, opening the window. And here I thought I'd at least be your partner. You want to demote yourself from husband? When we're going on 3 kids? Oh, don't pick apart my sentences. He scrunched his nose at her, and she returned the gesture before laughing. Where's the food? She asked as he stepped out. Already there. How did you slip out with the kids? Nap time. Adrian! The Kwamis were watching. It's fine. The last time you left them with the Kwamis, they taught Emma that sliced cheese can stick to the wall, and she decided to make an art piece.
I said it was fine, not ideal. She laughed as they touched down on the balcony of the bakery.
Well, thank you for the escort.
Thank you for the date, he said, setting her down, bracing his weight against her until she had her balance.
After all these years,
she said, looking at the lit decorations and table settings as she rubbed her abdomen. I know. I'm surprised you weren't tired of sushi, too. She swatted at his chest.
Tradition,
she barked. Marinette was right. They always had sushi for their birthdays, starting with hers, years ago when they were teenagers. When he learned of her identity. You really thought I was going to get a kumdas back then, didn't you?
Yeah.
She walked to the table.
You literally saw the Akuma and stared.
Smack, smack, he grinned.
You're ridiculous.
You know, I've thought about it a lot.
The Akuma?
Yeah. You know, if we hadn't been dating, I think I would have let it get to me. Earning your identity like that. A crease dug between her eyebrows.
What do you mean? What stopped it?
You. He pulled out her chair and helped her in before taking his spot across from her. And this.
This?
Marinette looked around. Home. She flattened her lips, skeptical. Home? You made me feel whole, Marinette. You know this. Even back then, you were... This was... Well... He cleared his throat. I love you, Marinette. She smiled, reaching for, then raising, her glass. To teenage love. And adult reunions. They clinked glasses, starting off their dinner the right way. He'd only had food on his plate earlier, so the kids would eat, after all. Did you get spicy food? I genuinely don't understand how cravings can change so much during pregnancy.
But did you get spicy food?
Yes, my love. He sighed with a smile. Yes, I did.
Good. Which ones?
Smiling to himself, Cat Noir pointed out the entrees to his wife, his heart bright as light bulbs glowed around them. This woman had given him far more than the list of birthday presents she'd planned that he liked teasing her about. Far more important than a birthday. Adrian Dupang Chang knew what he had with his partner was every 11/11 wish and blown-out candles. Marinette Dupang Chang had built, with and for her Cat Noir, a family and a place to belong. He'd gotten his happy ending by working through his demons with this stunning woman by his side. Cat Noir enjoyed every mundane day, no longer wondering what it would be like to feel like he was home. Because he knew. He knew, and he taught it to Emma and Louis, and soon he'd teach Hugo too. Home is where Marinette is.